What's up, cousin? You already know what time it is. It's your favorite cousin Tripp, and I'm back with another banger. Bow. Yeah, I gotta call Uncle Ray. I gotta call him and I gotta tell him that I pretty much stole his crush. I just know it's the right thing to do. You know what I'm saying? It's the right thing to do. Uncle Ray has been there for me. Let me stay with him. His crush come over and now I'm in Youngstown in a relationship with the person that he was so fond over. This is about to be a story time because this is part 3 of one of the craziest things that happened to me. The preacher stole my heart, stole my innocence. It was just a regular day.
I know you see me on television, I know you see me on your YouTube, but you don't know me in real life, little homie, you better play it cool. Never let your left hand know what your right hand finna do, cause they gon' study your every move, try to imitate what you about to do. This here is the gang, we don't rock with you if I ain't feeling you. I've been on top since I started, dog, and I ain't finna move.
We called Uncle Ray and we put it on speakerphone, and I'm very anxious, hoping that he would answer, but at the same time hoping that he wouldn't. Darren told me that they had never been intimate, they never messed around, and they were just friends. And from the looks of things, it did seem like Uncle Ray was just very fond of Darren, crushing on Darren hard. It didn't seem like it was a relationship there from when I seen them interact with each other. But the fact that they slept in the same room kind of threw me off. But then again, it was only 2 beds. It was another bed way up in the attic, but I think it was cold up there. And then it was the guest room. So, I don't know. He needed to call. We needed to call. So we call and the phone ringing. Uncle Ray answers. He says hello, as if he already knew who it was. And Darren said, "Hey, what's up, Ray?" It was like, "Hey, what's going on?" You know, not very friendly. It just sounded like, "What's up?" Like, "What's good?" He said, "I need to talk to you about something." He was like, "Okay, what you need to talk about?" Darren says, me and Ali, we in a relationship, and he's out here in Youngstown with me. And there was an awkward silence. It seemed like it lasted for about a minute, but it was probably only like 4 or 5 seconds. It was just, and I'm looking at Darren like, he looking at me. It's like, then Ray says, "Well, where is he at? Let me speak to him." And I'm standing right next to him. He said, "Hold on," he give the phone to me, and I'm like, no, but I take the phone. I'm like, "What's up?" He like, "So you and Darren in a relationship?" And I said, "Yeah." And he was like, "Well, when did that happen?" And I said, it just, I don't know, it just happened. You know, I didn't explain to him how Darren came into my room while he was at his crib and kissed me. I knew he wouldn't be happy with that. So I said, it just happened. I know he was puzzled, like, it just happened. You only met him once in my crib, but yeah, I just left it at that. And he was like, okay, so is that what you want to do? And I said, yeah. It's like, you staying out there with him? And I said, yeah. He was like, okay. He was like, well, I've been trying to call you. I guess that's the reason why you haven't answered your phone. And I was like, yeah, it's just been a lot going on. He was like, well, you can still call me, and I was like, okay. So we hung up and I felt relieved, um, just to have that off of me. That was like a big weight, I didn't feel good about it at all. But like I said, the way I felt about Darren at the time, it was kind of like it didn't matter, you know, it just didn't. I was going to be with him because he wanted to be with me. And I wanted to make him happy. I wasn't going to say, oh no, I can't be with you because Uncle Ray likes you. It just, no. And that's the way I thought back then. So, living with Darren in the new house. In the beginning, I was excited that we was going to have our own space, and we had left his mother's house with the brothers and everybody coming through and the cousins, and it just was so much traffic and so crowded and messy and just no privacy at all. I mean, only privacy that we got was when we was in a car by ourselves together. You know, most of the time when we was home, his son was with us, or brothers was riding with us, or people from the neighborhood. It was just a lot going on. And that wasn't what I expected when I said that I would go and live with him in Youngstown. Here I am, the 16-year-old boy that think he in love with somebody. Matter of fact, I was in love. I know I was. But, and I'm dealing with all of these things that I just didn't expect. But like I said, I was going to do it and go through it to be there for him. So when we moved into the house, I was excited that we would have more space, but at the same time, his son still lived with us. We were never affectionate around his son. I didn't even think his son knew about him in the beginning. It was short-lived because one of his brothers moved in with us, the one that was gay. And it was okay because it was like that was the only brother that really knew about our relationship. So it was kind of a little bit of comfort there because that was the only person that knew that I was in a relationship with his brother, you know. So I was cool with Erwin. And it was just a situation to where pretty much every day I was there while he was at work. He would get up in the morning and drive to Cleveland, work 8-9 hours, drive back about an hour and a half, and every time he would come home, he would be in a bad mood. He would be super exhausted and tired. It was a very weird situation to be in because here I am, a 16-year-old. His son is 12, going on 13, and I'm his guardian. You know, when he got out of school, he would come home and I was his guardian, but I'm only a few years older than him, and Darren would come home and he would have an attitude that dishes wasn't washed or certain things wasn't done. And it never was me. It was always his son who did it. And I would be like, Rod did that. I didn't leave dishes in the sink or left the kitchen messy. That was your son. You should tell him to clean up after himself. He's 13 years old, you know. He should be able to do that. And he was like, "Well, you older than him, you know. I don't think he ever said you an adult because that wouldn't have been right." And he was like, "Well, you his elder. You should be able to, tell him what to do and get him to do things." And I was like, "But that's still not my son, though. He only gonna listen to me to a certain degree if you don't tell him to respect me." Because it was a situation to where, right, he was cool. I think he looked up to me mostly because I did music and things like that. And I would tell him to do things and he would be very rebellious at times. He would take his time, like be real slow sweeping or leave it messy on purpose. And I would have to go behind him and be like, "You ain't, this how you sweep?" And he'd be like, "Yeah, I did it." Or take like an hour washing the dishes, 4 or 5 dishes. And I'd be like, and he would just take his time and just wait until his father came home. And then when his father came home, it was just like, "Oh, nigga, you can't tell me shit." And I'd be like, it was many times that I wanted to just like slap him up, but it was just like, "Yo, this is my dude's son and I'm not going to do this." And it was just like a situation where I felt like we were fighting for Darren's attention. I never really fought. I think Rye was fighting for it. I always took the back seat because that's his son, and I'm not going to be the type of person that tries to get in the way of somebody's, a father. But it started getting to the point where I needed Darren to back me up. Like, "Yo, your son is getting reckless. Like, you need to check him or tell him, to respect me." He was like, "Well, why can't you make him respect you? He a kid." And I was like, but to me, he look at me like I'm his peer. He don't know who I am. It's just like, "Oh, you just," nah. He was like, "Well, I'm going to have a talk with him." And he was like, "I'm going to tell him that we in a relationship." And I was like, you going to do that?" And he was like, "Yeah, I want him to respect you and to know who you are in my life." And he was like, "I've been wanting to do it. It's about that time." And I was like, "Okay." So one day when he came home from work, he went in there and he was like, "Ra, I want to talk to you." He told me to come down with him. And he sat him on the couch and he had a conversation with him. He was like, you know, "I love you, you my number one," and things like that. But he was like, you know, "Me and Ali, we in a relationship. You know, that's my dude. And I need you to respect him and treat him like an adult, you know, and listen to him. Don't give him a hard time because you making the household hectic, you know." And he was like, "Okay," and this and that. And it was cool for a while. But I just felt like it was always this underlying thing with Rod, and the relationship that he had with his father was always made me turn, just made me just go like, it was certain things that he would do that I just wasn't comfortable with. You know, Many times when he would come home from work, it was a thing to where at first I didn't greet him at the door. Rye did, and he would run and be like that, and he would give him a hug, things like that. But Darren said to me, he was like, "Why don't you say hello or give me a hug when I come through the door?" He was that type of person who wanted that love instantly once he came in. And I'm like, well, I was like, "I will. I don't have no problem with that." But once I started doing it, it was kind of like a race to the door. You know, we would hear the car pulling up in the driveway, and it was kind of like, oh, Darren home, and we both would run to the door. And I would always stand back, you know, and let Rye hug Darren. But the thing that just kind of didn't sit well with me is that he would kiss him on the lips, and this little boy is 13 years old, and they would hug the same way I hugged him. You know, he would hug him close. And the thing is, when I would hug Darren, I could feel his dick pressed up against my stomach. It's just the way it was set up. You know, you could feel it when you hug him that close. And I always thought to my mind, like, I wonder if his son feels it. I just didn't feel like it was appropriate. And to be kissing him on the lips. So he would do it. He would walk up to him and hug him and kiss him. And then afterwards, I would do the exact same thing. Ask him how his day was. He usually would go upstairs with me, and we would be in the room for a while before we came back downstairs, and he would work with Rod with his homework and things like that. But that always was a problem to me. Another problem to me was when we would get into arguments, he would go and sleep in the room with Rod. And I had a problem with that. It was times that I would just get up and not see him in the room with me, and I would go looking, and I would go to Rod's room, and I would see him sleeping with him. And I would stand at the door like, you know, it's a funny situation to be placed in when it's somebody's child, you know, and they're a single father. You don't know what to say. Even though I wasn't comfortable with it, I hated it. In fact, I hated him kissing him in the lips at 13. I hated him sleeping in the bed with him, especially when we got into an argument. He wanted his space, so he would use that. He would use the son. Well, I'm going to go spend time with my son. I don't have time with that. I'm going to focus on my kid. And I never fought against that. Sometimes I would just stand in the door, man, and just look at him. Sometimes I would cry, and I would go back in the room and fall asleep till I heard him getting up for work in the morning, or he came home from work the next day. I never was cool with it. You know, he had some gay friends that would come over, and they would hang out sometimes, and they would be in the kitchen just talking and just being just messy and just like, and I would be like, you know, it's a kid walking around here and all this, and he was just getting the earful. It was just certain things I just didn't agree with when it came to Rye and Darren. Now, the whole church situation, when I first got there, I didn't go to church. I knew that they were very church, you know, they was into the church. I knew he was a minister at the church that he went to, but I didn't go. I didn't have church clothes and things like that. You know, I used to try to hang out with his brothers who were straight, and they were just more hood, you know, and I related more to that. I wanted to hang out with his brothers, and we actually bonded over music and me rapping and stuff like that. They would take me to the projects in Youngstown. I would battle everybody, and we would smoke weed, and I would come back home, and he'd be like, you know, what you been doing, hanging with my brothers and stuff, and I'd be like, yeah. He really didn't like the fact that I hung with his brothers, because he said they were trouble, and, you know, they was cool people. They wasn't really thugs to me. They was like cool people. You know, sometimes they would even go to church spelling like loud, you know, and it was just crazy. But he got annoyed and didn't want me hanging out with his brothers, and he told me, you know, if I'm going to be living in the house with him, that I had to go to church. It was like, everybody who sleeps under this roof is going to go to church on Sunday. And I was like, okay, you know. So I started wearing his clothes to go to church. Now, He was taller than me, about 6'1", and he was slim, so I could fit his stuff, but his stuff was too long for me for the most part. And I'm a 16-year-old kid. I don't know what people thought with me going to the church. Some of them knew that I was wearing his clothes and things like that because they would see him in it one Sunday and then see me in it the next Sunday. It was very weird being in the church and being in the pulpit, watching him in the pulpit. I would see women staring at him. He was very attractive, like I said. Everybody wanted a piece of him. Everybody wanted to be a first lady. It was a weird feeling for me because it was kind of like, it was a small church, but there was the first lady who was the pastor's wife, and then he was the minister, and I was his boyfriend. So it was kind of like I was the person who was always with him, riding in the car with him, right by his side. People knew that we were close. I don't know. I think some people may have suspected that something was going on, but at the same time, that's their minister of the church, and I don't know. Maybe they thought he was looking out for me, or I was some charity cases. I don't know what people thought, and I think the way he carried it was, "Don't nobody ask me none of my business." It was weird, very weird going to church, but I went every Sunday, you know, to be with him. And things just got crazier and crazier as time went on. Um, Darren taught me how to drive because he was so tired of driving and commuting back and forth to Cleveland to go to work. It was just draining on him. So the only way that I could help was to learn how to drive so I could drive him to work and come back, Sometimes I would go drive him to work and hang out in Cleveland until he got off. But I was still a runaway kid. I was still on the lam, so I couldn't go around too many family members. A lot of times it was too cold in Cleveland just to walk around for hours and go to the mall and stuff like that. So I didn't go all the time, but sometimes I did. Uh, it just got more crazy and crazy. On this day, I decided to stay home. You know, Rye, he was at school. Erwin, he was at work. And I'm just in the crib, cleaning up, doing things in the house, listening to music. And I hear a car pull up in the driveway. So I'm like, well, who is this? I look out the window. It's not Darren's car. It's not a car that I recognize. So I watch, and I see the door open, and this lady gets out the car, and she's beautiful. Like, really nice long hair, light skin, just really sophisticated and dressed really, really nice, like a lawyer or something. And she walks up the stairs, and I see her walking up, so I open up the door and I say, "Hey, what's up? Can I help you?" And she said, "Well, who are you?" And I was like, "I'm Ali. Who are you?" And she said, "I'm Darren's wife. Where is he at?" Man, when I tell you, I was lost for words. I just stood there looking at her. And I said, he at work right now. And she was just like, "Okay, well, tell him that I came by." I'll be back. I'm about to go over his mother's house. And she walked away, and I watched her walk away, drive off, and drive all the way down the street. And I was just pretty much in shock. Just, your wife? So now the plot thickens. Man, y'all got to tune in to part 4, man. Like, this story is so crazy. It's crazy. But I hope y'all enjoyed part 3. Leave your comments in the comment section down below. Shout out to my notification gang, man, who hit that bell notification so they know every time a video dropping. Shout out to my new subbies. Shout out to my old cousins. Thank y'all for watching.